The wrench slipped from my greasy fingers as my phone buzzed against the concrete garage floor. 10:30 p.m. on a Tuesday, and I was elbow-deep in brake pad replacements on Mrs. Henderson's ancient Honda. The text message glowed up at me like a neon sign in the darkness. Melanie. Shopping all day with Ashley? We'll be home late. Don't wait up. I wiped my hands on the shop rag, letting out a laugh that echoed off the garage walls. Ashley's husband, Rick, was 3 stools down at Murphy's bar right now, drowning his sorrows in cheap beer and complaining about his mortgage payments. I knew because Jared had texted me a picture 20 minutes ago. Rick's sad face illuminated by the bar's flickering television screen. Me. Tell Ashley's husband I said hi. The reply came faster than a guilty conscience. Melanie. What do you mean? Me. Rick's at Murphy's. Has been for 2 hours. Funny how shopping works these days. 12 minutes later, the garage door exploded open. Melanie burst through like a tornado in designer jeans, her face flushed and panicked. No shopping bags in sight. Her perfectly styled blonde hair looked like she'd been running her fingers through it, and her lipstick was smeared just enough to tell a story I didn't want to read. Hey, honey, I said, taking a slow sip of coffee from my thermos. How was the mall? She froze in the doorway, her chest rising and falling like she'd just finished a marathon. The mall was fine, great. We went to that new place in Riverside. Riverside's an hour away, I said, not looking up from the brake caliper in my hands. Long drive for shopping. We wanted to try somewhere different. I nodded, letting the silence stretch between us like a rubber band ready to snap. 23 years of marriage had taught me the value of strategic quiet. Melanie hated silence almost as much as she hated being caught in a lie. Well, she said, backing toward the door connecting the garage to our kitchen. I'm exhausted. Going to bed. Sweet dreams, I called after her, but she was already gone. I finished the brake job in the quiet darkness, my mind spinning faster than the wheels I'd just repaired. Something was rotten in our little suburban paradise, and it wasn't just the smell of motor oil and old coffee grounds. The next morning, I found Melanie's purse sitting on the kitchen counter while she showered. I'm not proud of what I did next, but desperation makes thieves of honest men. Hidden in the side pocket, wrapped in a receipt from Tony's Italian kitchen, was a second phone I'd never seen before. The screen lit up with a passcode prompt, but Melanie had always been predictable. Our daughter Ava's birthday, Suite 14. The phone unlocked like it was welcoming me home. What I found made my coffee taste like ash in my mouth. Dozens of messages from someone named Darren. Photos that made my stomach turn. Hotel receipts from the Riverside Inn dated 3 days ago. Plans for tonight at the same motel where we'd spent our 10th anniversary. Darren Morrison. I knew the name. He ran Morrison's used cars on the outskirts of town, one of those lots with more rust than chrome and a reputation for selling lemons to desperate people. Slicked back hair, gold chains, and the kind of smile that belonged on a carnival barker. I memorized his number, took pictures of the most damning messages with my own phone, and slipped the device back into Melanie's purse exactly where I'd found it. When she came downstairs 20 minutes later, hair perfect and makeup flawless, I was reading the sports page like nothing had changed. Morning, beautiful, I said without looking up. She kissed the top of my head, her perfume different than usual, something expensive and cloying. Morning, I might be late again tonight. Big listing presentation. Of course you are. That evening I closed my auto shop early and drove to Morrison's used cars. The lot sat on a strip of cracked asphalt between a defunct gas station and a pawn shop, surrounded by a chain-link fence topped with razor wire. Class operation. Melanie's silver BMW was parked behind the main building, tucked between a rusted pickup truck and a shipping container. The office lights were off, but I could see movement in the back room, shadows dancing against drawn blinds. I sat in my truck for 10 minutes, engine running, hands gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles went white. Part of me wanted to march in there and confront them both. The smarter part, the part that had built a successful business from nothing, told me to be patient. Revenge was a dish best served with careful planning and maximum impact. I compromised. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. The pocket knife I kept for cutting electrical tape made quick work of Darren's rear tires. The satisfying hiss of escaping air was like music to my ears. Then I took my keys, the same keys that had opened every lock in my life for the past 2 decades, and carved a simple message into the hood of his pristine Mustang. Cheater. The note I left under his windshield wiper was brief and to the point. Try driving her home next time, Darren. A concerned citizen. I was back in my truck and halfway home when my phone buzzed with a text from Mrs. Dunleavy, our 70-year-old neighbor who treated gossip like an Olympic sport. Mrs. D. Saw your husband at Morrison's lot tonight. Everything okay? The message wasn't sent to me. It was sent to Melanie. Mrs. Dunleavy had hit the wrong contact in her phone, and I was seeing the play-by-play of my own surveillance in real time. I pulled into my driveway just as Melanie's BMW turned the corner, moving faster than the speed limit allowed. She parked crooked in the driveway and practically ran into the house, her phone already pressed to her ear. Told you someone saw us, she was saying as I walked through the front door. No, I don't know who did it. The whole car is ruined. She spotted me and ended the call quickly, forcing a smile that looked like it physically hurt. Hey, honey, how was your day? Productive, I said, hanging my jacket on the hook by the door. Fixed the Henderson's Honda, tuned up the Petersons' minivan, and helped a friend with some automotive advice. That's nice. She was texting furiously, her fingers flying across the screen. Listen, about tonight, let me guess. The listing presentation ran late. Exactly. These clients are very demanding. I nodded sympathetically. I'm sure your clients, appreciate your dedication. Her face went pale, but she recovered quickly. I don't know anyone named Darren. Of course not. Just thinking about that used car commercial I heard on the radio. Morrison's used cars. Darren Morrison treats you like family. Catchy jingle. Right. Well, I'm going to bed. Long day tomorrow. As she headed upstairs, I called after her. Don't worry about the car trouble, honey. I'm sure you'll find another way to get around. She paused at the top of the stairs, but didn't turn around. What car trouble? Just a feeling. You know how unreliable some vehicles can be, especially the ones with too many miles on them. That night, lying in bed next to my wife of 23 years, I stared at the ceiling and planned my next move. She thought she was playing chess while I played checkers. Time to show her that this blue-collar husband had learned a few strategic moves of his own. The game was just beginning, and I intended to win. The next few weeks passed in a blur of fake smiles and strategic silence. Melanie continued her late meetings while I continued my investigation. The second phone revealed a pattern. Tuesday and Thursday nights at the Riverside Inn, Sunday afternoons at Darren's apartment above the car lot, and elaborate cover stories that would make a fiction writer proud. But the real revelation came when I started paying attention to the puppet master behind the curtain. Tracy Kellerman had been Melanie's best friend since college, a bottle-blonde influencer who ran a mommy blog called Tracy's Truth and treated social media like her personal kingdom. She had 40,000 followers who hung on her every word about organic baby food and designer workout clothes. What they didn't know was that Tracy had a memory like an elephant and a grudge like a tumor. I discovered the connection by accident, scrolling through Tracy's Instagram while eating lunch at my shop. There, buried in a post about supporting local businesses, was a photo of her standing next to Darren Morrison in front of his car lot. The caption read, "Some people deserve second chances. Proud to support a friend who's turning his life around." The post was dated 6 months ago, right around the time Melanie started working late. I dug deeper, using skills I'd learned from 20 years of troubleshooting automotive problems. Every problem has a source, and every source leaves evidence. Tracy's social media history revealed regular check-ins at Morrison's used cars, tagged photos with Darren at local restaurants, and comments on his posts that were just a little too friendly for casual acquaintances. The pieces clicked into place like a perfectly aligned engine. Tracy wasn't just Melanie's friend, she was the architect of this whole mess. But why? The answer came from an unexpected source, my own business records. I was reviewing old employee files when I found Tracy's application from 2018. She'd worked for me briefly, handling bookkeeping and customer service, until I caught her skimming money from the register and inflating invoice amounts. I'd fired her quietly, trying to spare Melanie the embarrassment of having a criminal for a best friend. Apparently, Tracy hadn't appreciated my discretion. Armed with this knowledge, I shifted my strategy. If Tracy wanted to play puppet master, I'd cut her strings and watch the whole show collapse. The first shot was fired at Melanie's company holiday party, held in the sterile conference room of Pinnacle Real Estate. I arrived fashionably late, wearing my best suit and carrying a bottle of expensive wine I'd bought specifically for the occasion. David. Melanie's boss, Richard Hawthorne, greeted me with the kind of enthusiasm reserved for root canals and tax audits. So glad you could make it. Wouldn't miss it for the world, I said, scanning the room until I spotted my target. Darren Morrison stood near the buffet table, looking like he'd borrowed his suit from a funeral director. Tracy was beside him, whispering something in his ear that made him laugh. I made my way through the crowd, accepting congratulations on Melanie's recent sales success and nodding at the appropriate moments. When Richard called for attention to make his annual speech about teamwork and dedication, I saw my opportunity. Before Richard starts, I said, raising my wine glass, I'd like to make a toast. The room fell quiet. Melanie's face went white. To my beautiful wife, Melanie, I continued, and her incredible work ethic. The long hours, the weekend appointments, the dedication to client satisfaction, it's truly inspiring. Here's to Melanie and her new partnership with Darren Morrison. May all your late nights be as productive as your property sales. The silence that followed was deafening. Richard looked confused. Melanie looked terrified. Darren looked like he wanted to crawl under the buffet table. Partnership? Richard asked. Oh, yes, I said, taking a sip of wine. Melanie's been working very closely with Darren on some private listings, very exclusive properties. Isn't that right, honey? Melanie opened her mouth, but no words came out. Darren stepped forward, his face flushed with anger. I think there's been some misunderstanding. No misunderstanding at all, I interrupted. I know exactly what kind of business you two have been conducting. The question is, does everyone else? That's when Darren made his mistake. He grabbed my arm, trying to pull me aside for a private conversation. 20 years of manual labor had given me muscles he hadn't counted on, and 6 months of boxing lessons with Jared had taught me how to use them. I didn't throw a punch. I didn't need to. I simply twisted out of his grip and let his own momentum carry him backward into the buffet table. He went down hard, taking a tray of mini quiches with him. The room exploded in gasps and whispers. I straightened my tie, set down my wine glass, and headed for the door. Enjoy the party, I called over my shoulder. I'm sure it'll be very memorable. The fallout was immediate and spectacular. By the next morning, half the town knew about the scene at the holiday party. Mrs. Dunleavy had heard it from her daughter, who worked at the bank next to Pinnacle Real Estate. The story grew with each telling, until I was some kind of action hero who'd single-handedly exposed a criminal conspiracy. Melanie didn't come home that night, or the next. When she finally appeared on Thursday morning, she looked like she'd been sleeping in her car. Her perfect makeup was smudged, her designer clothes were wrinkled, and her confidence was nowhere to be found. We need to talk, she said. Do we? I was sitting at the kitchen table, reading the newspaper and drinking coffee like nothing had happened. I thought you were too busy with your partnership to talk to your husband. David, please. It's not what you think. It's exactly what I think. The only question is what you plan to do about it. She sat down across from me, her hands shaking slightly. I made a mistake, a terrible mistake, but it's over now. Darren and I, we're done. Because you got caught. Because I realized what I was throwing away. Tears started flowing, right on cue. 23 years, David. Our family, our life together. It can't all be worthless. I folded the newspaper and looked at her, really looked at her, for the first time in months. The woman I'd married was still there, buried under layers of ambition and social climbing, but she was there. For a moment, I almost believed her. Then my phone buzzed with a notification. Ava, our 19-year-old daughter, had posted a new video on TikTok. The caption read, "When your dad is a psycho who can't handle strong women." The video showed her sitting in her dorm room, explaining to her followers how her controlling father had attacked an innocent businessman because he couldn't handle his wife's success. She painted me as a jealous, violent man who was stuck in the past and threatened by modern relationships. Within an hour, the video had 3,000 views and dozens of comments calling me everything from a caveman to a domestic terrorist. I showed the phone to Melanie. She watched the video twice, her face cycling through surprise, embarrassment, and something that might have been shame. "I'll talk to her," she said quietly. "Will you?" I stood up, suddenly exhausted by the whole charade. "Or will you let Tracy coach her through another performance? Tracy has nothing to do with this. Tracy has everything to do with this. She introduced you to Darren. She's been covering for your meetings. She's been feeding you lies about how you deserve better than your boring husband. And now she's got our daughter making viral videos about what a monster I am." Melanie's silence told me everything I needed to know. "Here's what's going to happen," I said, my voice calm and steady. "You're going to choose, right now, today. Either you cut ties with Tracy and Darren completely, go to counseling, and try to rebuild what you destroyed, or you pack your bags and move out. But you don't get to have both. You don't get to keep your affair partners and your safety net husband." She stared at me for a long moment, and I could see the calculation in her eyes. She was weighing her options, measuring the cost of each choice. Finally, she spoke. "I need time to think." "You've had months to think. The thinking is over." That afternoon, I received an anonymous text message. "You have no idea who you're really fighting. Back off now or face the consequences." I stared at the message for a full minute, then typed back, "Looking forward to it." If Tracy Kellerman wanted a war, she was about to get one, but this time I'd be ready for her. The anonymous threats continued for 3 days, text messages arriving at random hours, each one more creative than the last. My personal favorite was, "Your reputation is built on sand. One push and it all comes down." I had to admire Tracy's commitment to dramatic flair. She'd always been theatrical, even back in college when Melanie would drag me to her amateur theater productions. Now she was directing a real-life drama with my family as the cast. But Tracy had made one crucial mistake. She underestimated her opponent. While she was busy sending threatening messages and coaching Melanie through her victim performance, I was doing what I did best: methodical investigation and strategic planning. 20 years of diagnosing engine problems had taught me that every system has a weakness, and every weakness can be exploited. Tracy's weakness was her ego. I started with her social media empire. Tracy's truth was built on carefully curated lies about her perfect life, her successful marriage, and her thriving business ventures. But social media leaves digital footprints, and those footprints tell stories that don't always match the official narrative. A reverse image search revealed that half her original content was stolen from other influencers. Her homemade organic baby food photos came from a Pinterest account in Oregon. Her spontaneous family vacation pictures were stock photos from a travel website. Even her authentic product reviews were copied from Amazon listings. But the real gold mine was her business records. Tracy claimed to make 6 figures from her blog and sponsorship deals, but a little digging revealed the truth. She was drowning in debt. Credit cards maxed out, mortgage payments behind, and a trail of unpaid bills stretching back 2 years. The sponsorship deals she bragged about were mostly barter arrangements, free products in exchange for posts that reached maybe a few hundred engaged followers. Her successful online courses had sold exactly 12 copies in the past year. The lifestyle she flaunted was funded entirely by her husband's construction business, which was also struggling thanks to her spending habits. Armed with this information, I made my first move. I created a fake social media account, complete with a generic profile picture and a backstory about being a concerned parent, and started leaving comments on Tracy's posts. Nothing threatening or obviously malicious, just pointed questions about her content. "Love this recipe. Where did you first discover it?" Asking because I saw something similar on Pinterest. "Your vacation looks amazing. What camera did you use for these professional quality shots?" Interested in your course, but I noticed the content seems familiar. Do you offer original material or curated resources? Other followers started asking similar questions. The doubt spread like a virus through her comment sections, and Tracy's engagement numbers began to plummet. Sponsors started pulling out when they realized her audience was turning skeptical. But the real masterpiece was yet to come. I reached out to 3 of her biggest competitors, other mommy bloggers who'd been watching Tracy's rise with barely concealed jealousy. I sent them anonymous tips about her stolen content, complete with side-by-side comparisons and timestamps. Within 48 hours, Tracy's truth was being exposed across multiple platforms as a fraud. The influencer community turned on her like wolves. Screenshots of her stolen content spread faster than gossip at a church social. Her follower count dropped by thousands in a single day. Sponsors demanded refunds. Her carefully constructed empire crumbled in real time. But Tracy wasn't finished. If anything, the exposure made her more dangerous. That's when she played her nuclear option. She went after my business. The first sign of trouble came on Monday morning when 3 of my regular customers called to cancel their appointments. By Tuesday, I'd lost 2 more. When Mrs. Peterson came to pick up her minivan, she could barely look me in the eye. "David," she said, "I've been hearing some concerning things about your situation at home. I think it might be best if I found another mechanic." "What kind of things?" She shifted uncomfortably, clutching her purse like a shield. "Well, Tracy Kellerman mentioned on her blog that you've been acting erratically. Violent outbursts, paranoid behavior. She's worried about Melanie's safety." I felt something cold settle in my stomach. "Tracy said that. She's just looking out for her friend, but I have grandchildren, and I can't take any risks." By the end of the week, I'd lost half my customer base. Tracy had weaponized her remaining followers and her network of suburban gossips, painting me as an unstable man who was dangerous to be around. The story grew with each telling. I was stalking my wife, threatening her friends, and exhibiting signs of a mental breakdown. The genius of her strategy was its subtlety. She never accused me of anything specific or actionable. Instead, she expressed concern for my mental health and worry about my family's safety. She positioned herself as the caring friend who was reluctantly speaking out about a difficult situation, It was character assassination disguised as compassion, and it was working. That Friday, I was closing up the shop when Jared stopped by with a six-pack of beer and a grim expression. "We need to talk," he said. We sat in the empty garage, drinking beer and listening to the hum of fluorescent lights. Jared had been my best friend since high school, the best man at my wedding, and the only person who knew the whole truth about my situation. "It's getting bad out there," he said finally. "People are talking, and not in a good way. Let them talk." "David, I'm serious. Tracy's got half the town convinced you're some kind of ticking time bomb. She's got them scared." "Scared of what? That I'll give them a fair price on brake pads?" "Scared that you'll snap, that you'll hurt someone." He took a long pull from his beer. "She's smart, I'll give her that. She's making you into the villain of her story, and people are buying it." I stared at the concrete floor, watching condensation drip from my beer bottle. "So what do you suggest? That I roll over and let her destroy everything I've built?" "I suggest you be smarter than she is. Right now, you're playing her game by her rules. You need to change the rules." "How?" Jared smiled, and for the first time in weeks, I saw hope in his expression. "By giving people something bigger to talk about. Something that makes your problems look like small potatoes." He was right. I'd been thinking too small, focusing on individual battles instead of the war itself. Tracy wanted to paint me as the villain? Fine. But every good villain needed a spectacular finale. That night, I sat in my empty house. Melanie was staying at Tracy's, playing the role of the frightened wife, and began planning the endgame. If Tracy wanted a show, I'd give her a performance she'd never forget. The puppet master was about to discover that her strings could be cut. The plan came together like a perfectly tuned engine, each component designed to work in harmony with the others. Tracy thought she was playing chess, but I was about to flip the board and scatter the pieces. Step 1 was reconnaissance. I needed to understand the full scope of Tracy's operation, who was involved, how deep the conspiracy went, and what leverage she had over each participant. The answer came from an unexpected source, Darren Morrison himself. I found him at Murphy's bar on Thursday night, 3 sheets to the wind and feeling sorry for himself. His car lot was struggling. Apparently having your reputation destroyed in front of the town's real estate professionals wasn't good for business. His fancy Mustang was still in the shop getting the cheater scratches buffed out, and he was driving a rusted pickup truck that looked older than our marriage. I bought him a drink and listened to his sob story with the patience of a priest hearing confession. "She promised me it would be simple," he slurred, staring into his whiskey glass like it held the secrets of the universe. "Just a little fun, nothing serious. Said her husband was a pushover who'd never figure it out." "She?" "Tracy. This whole thing was her idea from the start." He looked up at me with red eyes that took a moment to focus. "Wait, you're him? You're the husband." "Guilty as charged." I expected him to run or swing at me, or at least have the decency to look ashamed. Instead, he laughed, a bitter, broken sound that echoed off the bar's wood-paneled walls. "You want to hit me?" he asked. "Go ahead. Can't make things any worse." "I don't want to hit you, Darren. I want information." And that's when the dam broke. 3 whiskeys and a destroyed reputation had loosened his tongue, and the story that poured out was even worse than I'd imagined. Tracy hadn't just orchestrated the affair, she'd been planning it for years. The whole thing started as revenge for her firing, but it had evolved into something bigger, a systematic campaign to destroy my marriage, my business, and my reputation. She'd identified Darren as the perfect accomplice because of his financial desperation and his weakness for married women. She'd coached Melanie through every step of the deception, from the burner phone to the cover stories to the fake shopping trips. But the most damaging revelation was yet to come. "Your daughter," Darren said, his words slurring together. "The TikTok thing, that wasn't her idea." My grip tightened on my beer bottle. "What do you mean?" Tracy wrote the script, coached her through the whole performance, told her it would go viral, make her famous. Kid had no idea she was being used. The rage that washed over me was unlike anything I'd ever experienced. Going after my marriage was one thing. Targeting my business was fair game. But manipulating my 19-year-old daughter, turning her into a weapon against her own father, that crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. I left Darren at the bar and drove straight to Tracy's house. The Kellerman residence was a monument to suburban excess, a McMansion with more square footage than sense, decorated with the kind of trendy furniture that looked expensive but felt cheap. Tracy's husband Mike was out of town on a construction job, leaving her alone with her 2 young sons and her delusions of grandeur. I didn't knock. I walked through the unlocked front door like I owned the place, following the sound of Tracy's voice to her home office where she was recording content for her fading social media empire. And that's why it's so important to trust your instincts about people, she was saying to her phone camera. Sometimes the people closest to us are hiding dangerous secrets. She looked up as I entered the frame, her perfectly applied makeup unable to hide the shock in her eyes. "I'll call you back," she said to her audience, ending the recording. "Don't stop on my account," I said, settling into the chair across from her desk. "I'm sure your 12 remaining followers are eager to hear what you have to say. You're trespassing, and you're a fraud. But I'm not here to discuss our respective character flaws. I'm here to make you an offer." Tracy leaned back in her chair, trying to project confidence she didn't feel. "I'm listening. You're going to call off your dogs. Tonight. You're going to post a public apology explaining that you were mistaken about my character and that you let personal feelings cloud your judgment. You're going to tell everyone that my marriage problems are private family matters that have been blown out of proportion." "Or what?" I pulled out my phone and showed her the screen. It displayed a folder containing dozens of screenshots, financial records, and legal documents I'd gathered over the past week. "Or I release everything. Your stolen content, your fake sponsorship claims, your husband's business tax records showing how your spending has pushed him to the edge of bankruptcy, the threatening text messages you've been sending me from burner phones, and my personal favorite, the recording I just made of Darren Morrison explaining how this whole affair was your idea from the beginning." Tracy's face went through several shades of pale before settling on a sickly gray. "You're bluffing." "Try me." For a moment, we stared at each other across her cluttered desk, two players in a game that had spiraled far beyond its original boundaries. Then Tracy did something I didn't expect. She smiled. "You think you're so smart," she said, "but you have no idea what you're really up against." "Enlighten me." "Your wife doesn't want to come home, David. Even if I disappear tomorrow, even if Darren moves to another state, she's done with you. She's done with this boring little life you've built. She wants excitement, passion, adventure, all the things you stopped providing years ago." The words hit their target, but I didn't let her see the impact. "Is that your professional opinion, Dr. Kellerman? It's the truth, and deep down, you know it. That's why you're here threatening me instead of home fighting for your marriage, because you know it's already over." I stood up, pocketing my phone. "Maybe you're right. Maybe my marriage is over. But your little empire definitely is." I was halfway to the door when she called after me. "You release that information, and I'll destroy you. I'll make sure everyone knows what kind of man you really are." "They already know," I said without turning around. "I'm the kind of man who finishes what other people start." That night, I uploaded everything to a file-sharing website and sent the link to 20 of the biggest gossips in town. By morning, Tracy's secrets would be spread across every coffee shop, beauty salon, and church social in a 50-mile radius. But I wasn't done yet. Tracy was right about one thing. My marriage was over. Melanie had made her choice, and it wasn't me. But that didn't mean I had to go down quietly. If Tracy wanted to destroy my reputation, I'd make sure hers went down with it. And if my wife wanted excitement and adventure, I was about to give her more than she'd bargained for. The final act was about to begin, and this time I'd be writing the script. The community center had never seen anything like it. What was supposed to be the annual charity auction and social mixer had turned into the most anticipated event in town history, thanks to a carefully orchestrated campaign of whispers, hints, and strategic leaks. I'd spent 2 weeks building anticipation, dropping just enough information to ensure maximum attendance without revealing my hand. Mrs. Dunleavy thought I was planning to make a public apology. The Peterson family heard I was going to announce my divorce. Tracy's remaining supporters believed they'd witnessed my final humiliation. They were all wrong, and they were all right. The gymnasium was packed beyond capacity, with folding chairs arranged in neat rows facing a small stage where the auction items were displayed. I recognized faces from every corner of my life. Customers from the shop, parents from Ava's old school, neighbors I'd helped with car troubles, and enemies I'd made along the way. Melanie sat in the third row, flanked by Tracy and 2 other women I didn't recognize. She looked nervous, constantly checking her phone and glancing toward the exits. Tracy, on the other hand, appeared confident and composed, probably believing she'd already won our little war. Darren Morrison was notably absent. According to Jared, he'd left town 3 days ago, driving his patched-up Mustang toward parts unknown. Smart man. I waited until the formal auction ended, and Richard Hawthorne took the stage to thank everyone for their generous donations. Then I made my move. "Excuse me, Richard," I said, walking up the center aisle toward the stage. "Mind if I say a few words?" The room fell silent. Richard looked uncomfortable but nodded, stepping aside as I climbed the steps and faced the crowd. "Thank you all for coming tonight," I began, my voice carrying clearly through the gymnasium. I know many of you are here because you've heard rumors about my personal life. Some of you are probably expecting drama, maybe even a public breakdown. I hate to disappoint you, but the truth is actually much more interesting than the rumors. I pulled out my phone and connected it to the sound system Richard had been using for the auction. The first image appeared on the projection screen behind me, a text message conversation between Tracy and Darren, discussing their plan to destroy that arrogant mechanic once and for all. This is a text message sent by Tracy Kellerman to Darren Morrison 6 months ago, I said conversationally. As you can see, they were already planning to target my marriage before the affair even began. Gasps echoed through the crowd. Tracy shot to her feet, her face flushed with anger and panic. "This is harassment," she shouted. "You can't—" "Actually, I can," I interrupted, advancing to the next slide. "These are public records, obtained through perfectly legal means." Speaking of legal means, this next image shows Tracy's real financial situation versus what she claims on her social media accounts. The projection screen now displayed a side-by-side comparison. Tracy's Instagram posts about her six-figure income and successful business ventures, next to credit card statements showing massive debt and a foreclosure notice on her house. The crowd was riveted now, leaning forward in their seats like they were watching the climax of a thriller movie. I could see phones coming out, people recording every moment for later sharing. "But wait, there's more," I said, channeling my inner game show host. "This recording was made 3 days ago at Murphy's Bar." Darren's slurred voice filled the gymnasium, confessing to the affair and explaining Tracy's role in orchestrating the entire scheme. The crowd listened in stunned silence as he described how Tracy had recruited him, coached Melanie, and even scripted my daughter's viral video. When the recording ended, I looked directly at Tracy. She was standing frozen in place, her mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. "Now, I know what some of you are thinking," I continued. "This poor man has been betrayed by his wife and manipulated by her friend. He deserves our sympathy and support." I paused for effect, letting the murmurs die down. "But here's the thing. I don't want your sympathy. I want your attention. Because what happened to me could happen to any of you. Tracy Kellerman is a predator who targets successful people and destroys them for sport. She's done it to me, and she'll do it to others if we let her." Tracy finally found her voice. "You're insane," she screamed. "This is all lies and manipulation." "Is it?" I advanced to the next slide, which showed screenshots of her stolen social media content alongside the original sources. Because I have documentation of everything. Your fake lifestyle, your fraudulent business practices, your campaign of harassment and intimidation. The crowd was turning now. I could feel it. The sympathy they'd felt for the concerned friend was evaporating as the evidence mounted. Tracy must have sensed it too, because she grabbed Melanie's arm and started pushing toward the exit. "Oh, don't leave yet," I called after them. "I haven't gotten to the best part." The final slide was a screenshot of a bank transfer from Tracy's account to Darren's, dated 2 weeks before the affair began. The memo line read, "Services rendered as discussed." That's right, folks. Tracy didn't just orchestrate this affair, she paid for it. She literally hired Darren Morrison to seduce my wife as part of her revenge scheme. The gymnasium erupted in chaos. People were shouting, pointing, and demanding explanations. Tracy and Melanie had reached the exit, but they were blocked by a crowd of angry neighbors who wanted answers. I disconnected my phone from the sound system and walked to the edge of the stage. "In conclusion," I said, my voice cutting through the noise, "I want to thank everyone for coming tonight. You've been a wonderful audience for the final performance of Tracy's Truth. The show is now officially canceled." I left them there, Tracy frantically trying to explain herself to a hostile crowd, Melanie crying into her hands, and 200 of our neighbors buzzing with the biggest scandal in town history. By tomorrow morning, the story would be all over social media, shared and reshared until it reached every corner of our community. Outside in the parking lot, Jared was waiting by my truck, grinning like he just won the lottery. "That was beautiful," he said. "Absolutely beautiful. You destroyed her." "She destroyed herself. I just provided the documentation. So what now? You going to try to win Melanie back?" I looked back at the community center, where people were still streaming out in excited clusters, their voices carrying across the night air. Through the windows, I could see Tracy surrounded by angry neighbors, gesticulating wildly as she tried to defend the indefensible. "No," I said finally. "That part of my life is over. Time to start a new chapter." Any idea what that chapter looks like? I climbed into my truck and rolled down the window. I'm thinking about expanding the business. Maybe opening a second location in the next town over, somewhere people appreciate honest work and straight talk. "What about all this?" Jared gestured toward the chaos behind us. "All this will be tomorrow's news. but good mechanics are forever. As I drove home through the quiet streets of my soon-to-be former neighborhood, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Peace. The war was over, and I'd won not through violence or cruelty, but through patience, planning, and the simple power of truth. Tracy had called me a villain, and maybe she was right. But if being a villain meant refusing to be a victim, then I'd wear that label with pride. The house was dark when I pulled into the driveway, and it would probably stay that way. Melanie wouldn't be coming home tonight, or any other night. Our marriage was finished, destroyed by her choices and Tracy's manipulation. But I was still standing. Battered, maybe. Changed, definitely, but unbroken. And sometimes that's the only victory that matters.